Welcome to the deep dive. We really plunge into complex ideas here, trying to pull out the insights that genuinely matter.
That's the goal.
And today, we are diving headfirst into, well, frankly, one of the 20th century's most profound texts, and maybe one of the most challenging.
Definitely challenging. Wittgenstein's Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus.
Exactly. Our mission, our deep dive today, is to unpack Wittgenstein's really radical take on language, on logic, and the very fabric of reality itself.
It's a big task. His precision, it's almost mathematical.
It is, and you'll find it leads to some genuinely surprising conclusions
Yeah.
about what we can actually say meaningfully.
What can only be shown.
Right. And even what counts as a real philosophical problem in the first place. So get ready, because this might just rethink how you see the world.
And your place in it.
Okay, so let's jump in. Wittgenstein makes this, well, pretty bold declaration right from the get-go.
He does.
He says the world isn't really made up of things like we usually imagine. You know, chairs, trees, stuff like that. He argues it's built from something else entirely.
That's the starting point, and it's fundamental.
So let's unpack that. What is the world made of, then, according to Wittgenstein?
Well, what's really key here is his core distinction. He talks about two kinds of facts.
Okay.
He argues the world is completely described, basically, if all atomic facts are known, together with the fact that these are all of them.
All the atomic facts.
Exactly. And he makes this crucial difference between an atomic fact, he calls it a Sachverhalt, and a more general fact, a Tatsache.
Sachverhalt, Tatsache, got it.
Yeah, the Tatsache can be, compounded from other facts. So think of it like this. Socrates is wise. That could be an atomic fact.
Simple statement.
Right. But Socrates is wise, and Plato is his pupil. That's a compound fact. It's built from potentially simpler facts. It's not atomic itself.
Ah, okay. So the world isn't primarily things, but situations, events.
Precisely. It shifts the focus from static objects with properties to these dynamic arrangements, these things that are happening.
So the world divides into facts, as he
Right.
puts it. But if facts are the basic units, what are these atomic facts made of? What's the raw material?
Good question. Atomic facts are combinations of what he calls objects.
Objects. Okay, so we're back to objects.
Well, yes and no. These objects are the simple, uncompoundable substance of the world. But here's the really tricky part. He says they are, paradoxically, colorless. Logically colorless.
Colorless.
Meaning they don't have inherent qualities like red or heavy or round in themselves. They're defined purely by their potential.
Their potential.
Their potential to combine with other objects to form these atomic facts. Think of them maybe like Lego bricks. A single brick doesn't have tallness inherently.
Right, it just is.
But its potential to connect with other bricks in specific ways, that defines it logically. And he insists, even if the world were infinitely complex, there must still be these simple objects and atomic facts at the bottom.
Okay, so these colorless objects combine to form atomic facts. These are the ultimate building blocks. What does that imply for you, the observer, trying to understand the world?
It implies something huge. Atomic facts are independent of one another, totally independent.
Yeah.
Meaning the existence or non-existence of one atomic fact tells you absolutely nothing, logically, about whether any other atomic fact exists or not.
So, like my coffee cup being on the table.
Right. That fact doesn't logically force the sun to rise tomorrow or prevent it. They're separate situations.
That feels radical. No necessary connections between events.
Logically speaking, no. This independence is a cornerstone of his whole system. And as we'll see, it has massive implications down the line.
Okay, world equals independent facts made of colorless objects. Got it. Now, how do we, as humans, actually get a grip on this world? How do we represent it?
And here comes his really powerful metaphor. Language, he says, pictures reality.
Pictures it, like a photograph.
Sort of, but more fundamentally. A picture, or a proposition in language, works because its elements are arranged in a definite way.
Okay.
And that arrangement mirrors, or pictures, a possible arrangement of elements, objects in reality. In a way, yes. Its structure is a fact. And what allows any picture, a painting, a map, a sentence, to depict reality, whether it does so correctly or incorrectly, is its logical form. It has to share the same underlying logical structure, the same possibilities of arrangement as the reality it depicts. Every picture is, at its heart, a logical picture.
That's fascinating. It makes me think of, say, a musical score.
Good analogy.
It's just lines and dots on paper, right?
Yeah.
Totally different from sound. But somehow it perfectly captures the essence of the music.
Exactly. Or a blueprint for a building. Symbols on paper representing a physical structure. The form matches the potential reality.
The underlying logic is the same.
Precisely. The very possibility of using imagery or any kind of symbolic expression in our language rests on this shared logic of depiction. A sentence isn't just a random string of words, it's a fact itself, an arrangement of symbols.
Okay.
He even asks you to imagine a proposition made up of spatial objects, such as tables, chairs, and books, where the way you arrange those physical objects will express the sense of the proposition.
So the sentence acts like a model, a little tableau.
Exactly, a miniature fact showing how things could be arranged.
Which means then, if I understand a proposition, I instantly grasp the situation it represents. He says, without its sense having been explained to me.
Yes, that's the power of the picture. If the structure is clear, the meaning is potentially clear. And even more remarkably, he says, a proposition can communicate a new sense to us.
You can learn something totally new just by understanding the logical structure of the words.
Wow. And this leads right to the heart of truth for Wittgenstein. The agreement or disagreement of its sense with reality constitutes its truth or falsity.
So it's true if the picture matches a real state of affairs.
Yes. A proposition only really states something insofar as it is a picture, and only insofar as a proposition is logically articulated that it is a picture of a situation.
Meaningful language has to mirror possible facts.
That's the core idea.
Okay, this very precise picture theory view of language. It leads him to make some, well, pretty provocative claims about philosophy itself.
Oh, yes. Very provocative.
This might feel really counterintuitive if you've ever, dived into philosophical texts. He says, most questions and propositions of the philosophers result from the fact that we do not understand the logic of our language.
That's a direct hit.
And then, even more boldly, the deepest problems are, in fact, not problems at all.
Oof. Yeah.
That's huge. So the deepest problems aren't actually problems. What on earth is philosophy for, according to Wittgenstein?
Well, it completely reshapes its role. He says all philosophy is a critique of language. Full stop.
A critique of language. Not building theories,
Yeah.
not finding truths.
No. Its main job is the logical clarification of thoughts. He's very clear. Philosophy is not a body of doctrine, but an activity.
An activity. What does that mean for us? Like, what does a philosopher do then, if not build systems? Does it mean philosophy gives no answers?
That's pretty much it. It does not result in philosophical propositions like the good is X or reality is fundamentally Y. Instead, its result is the clarification of propositions.
So it cleans things up.
Exactly. Its task is to take thoughts that are cloudy and indistinct and make clear and give them sharp boundaries. And crucially, philosophy must set limits to what can be thought, and in doing so, to what cannot be thought.
Setting limits.
Yes. Essentially, it will signify what cannot be said by presenting clearly what can be said. Its value is in drawing that line, showing us the edge of meaningful talk.
So the idea is, if we can think it clearly, we can say it clearly.
That's proposition 4.116, yes.
But what about the things that can't be said? What's on the other side of that boundary he's drawing?
Now we're getting into really interesting territory. He points out that while propositions can represent the whole world of facts, they cannot represent what they must have in common with reality to be able to represent it at all.
Which is,
Logical form.
logical form itself can't be pictured.
Exactly. Think about it like the rules of chess. The rules enable the game, they structure it, but the game itself doesn't picture the rules. The rules are shown in how the game is played.
Okay.
Similarly, what finds its reflection in language, language cannot represent. This applies to what he calls formal properties or internal properties. These aren't things propositions can state, they show themselves in the way language works.
Can you give an example?
Sure. He says trying to state there are objects is actually nonsensical.
What? There are objects, aren't there?
Logically speaking, object isn't a property of things in the world. It's a formal concept. It's part of the logical structure we use to talk about the world. It's shown by our use of names for things, not stated by a proposition about objects.
So it's a feature of the language, not the world.
It's a feature of how language mirrors the world's structure. And this also means, he says, it's nonsensical to speak of the total number of objects, because object isn't a kind of thing you can count up in the world.
Wow. Okay. That really twists your thinking about language.
That does.
So if language is this precise, logically structured picture, How does his system handle concepts we use all the time, like identity, or saying all, or some, or even cause and effect? Let's start with identity. He says something pretty shocking about it.
He really does. He fundamentally challenges how we usually think about identity and logic. He just flat out states, to say of two things that they are identical is nonsense.
Nonsense.
And to say of one thing that it is identical with itself is to say nothing at all.
Okay, wait. Why nonsense?
His point is, if two things were truly identical, they wouldn't be two things, would they? They'd just be one thing.
Right.
And saying A is A doesn't tell you anything new. It's empty.
So how do we express identity then?
His solution is elegant, in a way. Identity of object I express by identity of sign, and not by using a sign for identity. Meaning, if you use the same name or symbol twice, you're referring to the same object. If you use different symbols, you're referring to different objects. Simple as that. You don't need a separate sign. The use of signs shows identity or difference.
That is incredibly streamlined.
Okay.
So what about general statements like, all humans are mortal, or some birds fly? How does he handle all and some without the usual logical symbol?
Yeah, that's another unique part. He developed this method, Russell talks about it in his intro, where generality isn't a separate function or concept.
Okay.
Instead, generality comes only in specifying the set of propositions concerned. So imagine you want to say, all apples are red. For Wittgenstein, that's not one single statement using an all quantifier.
It's not. Then what is it?
It's essentially understood as a truth function of all the individual propositions. This apple is red, that apple is red, the other apple is red, and so on.
So all is just shorthand for a potentially infinite list of specifics.
In a sense, yes. The all is captured by the logical structure that encompasses every single instance in that set. It allows him to describe the world completely by means of fully generalized propositions, without first correlating any name with a particular object. It's a complex way symbols relate to each other.
Right. That's quite a different way to think about generality. Now, maybe the biggest shock to our everyday intuition, cause and effect.
Yes. Buckle up.
Most of us, and science itself, seem built on the idea that causes lead to effects. What does Wittgenstein's system do to causality?
It pretty much dismantles it, logically speaking. Russell sums it up. There cannot be any such thing as a causal nexus. And Wittgenstein himself declares bluntly, belief in the causal nexus is superstition.
Superstition, that's it. Whoa. So throwing out science.
Not exactly throwing out science, but throwing out the idea of a logical necessity behind cause and effect. If there's no causal nexus, then the events of the future cannot be inferred from those of the present.
So when I think the sun will rise tomorrow.
He says that's an hypothesis. And this means that we do not know whether it will rise. Logically, we don't know.
But science predicts things. Gravity works.
He argues that induction, our habit of finding the simplest law that fits our experience, like gravity, has no logical justification, but only a psychological one.
Psychological. Meaning we just expect it.
Exactly. We expect patterns to continue, but there's no logical force making one thing happen just because another thing happened before it. There is no compulsion making one thing happen because another has happened. The only necessity that exists is logical necessity.
So what is the law of causality then, if it's not a real law?
For him, the law of causality isn't a law describing the world, but the form of a law. It's like a template, an a priori insight about the structure scientific propositions need to have if they're going to describe regularities. We impose that search for simple laws. It's not inherent in the world itself.
We impose the form. Okay, this all seems to be leading towards the limits of what we can say, what we can know.
Absolutely. This brings us right to the core, arguably the most profound part of the Tractatus. The implications of the limits of language.
And his most famous line.
Indeed. The limits of my language mean the limits of my world.
My language limits my world.
Yes. He elaborates. Logic pervades the world. The limits of the world are also its limit.
Yeah.
Because logic sets the framework for what can be thought and said. Anything outside that framework is outside, unsayable, unthinkable.
What we cannot think, we cannot say either.
Precisely.
So if language has this definite boundary and our whole world of expressible facts lives inside it, what's beyond that boundary? What's on the other side?
He uses this great analogy of your field of vision.
Okay.
You don't see a black line marking the edge of your vision, right?
Okay.
Because there's nothing outside it that you could see to define that edge.
Right, it just ends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he says our logical world is like that. It doesn't have a logical boundary from the inside. And this ties into his idea of the self. Yes. The philosophical self, the I, isn't part of the world, not an object in it. It's the limit of the world. He goes so far as to say, there is no such thing as the subject that thinks or entertains ideas, at least not as an object we can describe with facts.
So the eye isn't a thing, but the perspective, the edge of the map.
Sort of like the vanishing point in a painting, yeah. It's the condition for experience, not an item within experience.
And this connects to that strange claim about solipsism, that solipsism, when its implications are followed out strictly, coincides with pure realism.
Exactly. The eye of solipsism, the idea that only my experience is real, when you push it logically, it shrinks to a point without extension. It dissolves because there's no I object to be the sole reality. You're just left with the world, the facts.
Wow. And this view, this limit, it must apply to things like ethics and values, too.
Absolutely. Russell notes that the whole subject of ethics gets placed in this mystical, inexpressible region. Wittgenstein is blunt. Ethics cannot be put into words.
Cannot be put into words. So things like good and bad, right and wrong, they aren't facts in the world.
Not in the way that the cat is on the mat is a fact. They don't correspond to arrangements of objects. They're outside the realm of picturable facts.
But if ethics, if our deepest values can't be stated in propositions, how do we even communicate about them? How do we learn them? How do they matter?
And here's the crucial distinction he makes. There are indeed things that cannot be put into words. But that doesn't mean they don't exist or aren't important. He says they make themselves manifest. They are what is mystical.
They show themselves but can't be said.
Precisely. It's not how things are arranged in the world that's mystical, he says, but that it exists. The sheer brute fact of existence itself, that's the mystical.
The feeling of the world as a limited whole.
Yes, that's what he calls the mystical feeling. It's apprehended, maybe, but not stated.
So what about the ultimate questions? The meaning of life, the riddle of life, does that fall into this unsayable category too?
Completely, he argues. When the answer cannot be put into words, neither can the question be put into words.
If you can't formulate the answer, you can't even formulate the question properly.
Right. Therefore, logically speaking, the riddle does not exist.
No riddle.
Not as a well-formed question demanding a factual answer. He says even if all possible scientific questions have been answered, we know every single fact about the universe, the problems of life remain completely untouched.
Because they aren't factual problems.
Exactly. The solution, he suggests, isn't finding an answer, but is seen in the vanishing of the problem itself. When you realize it's not the kind of question that can be answered with language, the problem dissolves.
So what this means for you, the listener, is that for Wittgenstein, the only correct philosophical method is basically to shut up about metaphysics.
In a way. He says the proper method is to say nothing except what can be said, i.e. propositions of natural science, facts.
And if someone does try to say something metaphysical,
you just patiently demonstrate to him that he had failed to give a meaning to certain signs in his propositions. Show them they're using words outside the bounds of sense.
Which leads to that incredible final statement about his own book, the Tractatus itself.
The latter analogy.
Yeah. He says his own propositions, the ones we've been discussing, they serve as elucidations. But
ultimately, he who understands me finally recognizes them as nonsensical.
Nonsensical, his own work.
When he has used them as steps to climb up beyond them, you use the book to see the limits of language, and once you see them, you realize the book itself was trying to say things that can only be shown. So you kick the latter away.
Mind-blowing.
Okay.
One more area. Given all this focus on logic and facts, where does mathematics fit in? It seems logical, but it doesn't seem to describe facts about the world in the same way.
Right. He tackles this. He says, mathematics is a logical method. It's part of logic.
Okay.
However, he also says the propositions of mathematics are equations and therefore pseudo-propositions.
Pseudo-propositions. Again, why pseudo? That sounds dismissive.
It's not meant dismissively, I think. It's about their function. Equations, unlike factual propositions, don't picture states of affairs in the world.
So 2 + 2 = 4 isn't a picture of reality.
Not in the same way the sky is blue is. Mathematical propositions for him merely express the substitutability of two expressions. They show that 2 + 2 and 4 can be swapped in logical operations. They're rules for manipulating symbols.
Rules, not descriptions.
Exactly. He says the correctness can be perceived without its being necessary, that what they express should itself be compared with the facts. 2 + 2, 4 is right without checking the world. Calculation just serves to bring about that intuition of equivalence. Math is part of the tool we use to describe, not the description itself.
Okay. And that relates to logical propositions, too, the things like P or not P. He calls them tautologies.
Yes, exactly. All propositions of pure logic are tautologies, meaning they are true for all the truth possibilities. They come out true no matter what the actual facts of the world are. It is raining or it is not raining is always true.
True by definition, almost.
True by virtue of their logical structure alone. That's why one can recognize that they are true from the symbol alone, and that's why there can never be surprises in logic. Logic just unpacks the rules implicit in our signs.
So logic isn't something we discover out there in the world.
No.
It's fundamental to how we structure our understanding of the world. It's the framework, not the picture.
That's perfectly put. He says, logic is not a body of doctrine, but a mere image of the world. It reflects the world's structure. It's transcendental.
Transcendental, meaning it's kind of beyond the world of facts,
Yeah.
a condition for describing facts.
Yes, it's the condition for the possibility of any factual description. It shows us the structure of reality through the structure of language, but it isn't itself another fact within that reality.
We've covered a huge amount of ground here. Wittgenstein's really radical ideas.
Yeah.
The world is facts, not things.
Language as a picture, sharing logical form.
Philosophy is an activity of clarification, not doctrine. His pretty controversial views on identity and especially causality.
Definitely controversial. Belief in the causal nexus is superstition.
Right. And then, maybe most profound, grappling with the limits of language. Realizing there are things that can only be shown, never actually said.
And that deep dive really reminds us, doesn't it, that sometimes what truly matters, what's really significant, lies just beyond the reach of our propositions, in that unspoken realm that just makes itself manifest.
So, as you, our listener, reflect on Wittgenstein's Tractatus and these, frankly, mind-bending ideas, maybe consider this final thought. If all that can be said clearly, then what enduring questions or maybe profound experiences do you encounter in your own life that seem to make themselves manifest, but just stubbornly resist being put into clear words? Where in your own world do you feel the boundaries of language brushing up against the realm of the unsayable?